financial conversation that most expecting parents have before their baby arrives tends to go one of two ways. Either they do a rough calculation of what diapers and daycare will cost, decide it will be tight but manageable, and move on, or they open a spreadsheet, feel immediately overwhelmed, close it, and promise themselves they will come back to it later. What almost no one does, including people who consider themselves financially responsible, is address the 5 specific financial moves that determine whether the first year of parenthood is genuinely stable or genuinely destabilizing. Not because those parents are careless, but because no one has ever told them clearly what those 5 moves are, why the timing of each one matters, and what goes wrong when they are skipped or done out of order. According to a 2022 analysis from the Peterson KFF Health System Tracker, the average cost of pregnancy and newborn care in the United States, including prenatal visits, the delivery itself, and the newborn's first hospitalization, runs between $25,000 and $37,000 before insurance applies. After insurance, most families with employer-sponsored coverage still pay between $3,000 and $6,000 out of pocket in that first year, and that figure does not include the income disruption that comes with parental leave, the childcare costs that follow, or the insurance restructuring that is required the moment a new dependent enters the picture. The parents who navigate all of that without financial crisis are not wealthier than the parents who struggle. They are almost always the parents who addressed a specific set of financial mechanics before the baby came, not because they were more financially sophisticated, but because they knew what to look for. By the time this video ends, you will know exactly what those 5 moves are, why each one must happen before delivery and not after, and what to do first if you are starting this process later than you would have liked. You will also understand why the most dangerous financial assumption most expecting parents make is not that things will be expensive, but that the decisions they are delaying until after the baby is born are the ones with the least time pressure, when in most cases they are the ones with the most. If you are watching this in the second trimester with a notepad open, you are in good shape, and if you are watching this at 36 weeks on your phone after a midwife appointment, you are also in good shape, because some of these moves can be done in a single afternoon if you know what you are doing. The point of this video is not to make you feel behind. It is to make sure that when your baby arrives, you are not dealing with a financial decision you could have made months earlier in an environment where you had time, energy, and the cognitive space to think clearly, because almost every parent who struggles financially in that first year is not struggling because of the costs they saw coming, but because of the ones they did not. Everything I am covering here draws from peer-reviewed research on household financial stability, guidance from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and established frameworks from financial planning organizations that specialize in family transitions. This is education, not personal financial advice for your specific situation. So before you make any major decisions about insurance, accounts, or estate planning, work with a qualified financial advisor or licensed professional who knows the details of your situation. We are covering 5 things: the insurance restructuring most parents do wrong and why it costs them thousands, the emergency fund calculation that changes completely the moment a baby enters the picture, the account that takes 15 minutes to open and reduces your childcare costs by 30%, the document most parents delay until it is too late and what it protects, and the benefit most employers offer that the majority of expecting parents never claim, in that order. If you are finding this channel for the first time and you want clear, research-backed explanations of the financial and developmental realities of raising children without the guilt and without the noise, subscribing now means you will not have to go looking for the next one. Most expecting parents think of health insurance as something they will deal with after the baby is born, add the baby to the plan and done, without realizing that the structure of the plan they are currently on, the specific deductible, the out-of-pocket maximum, and the network of providers, was chosen before a baby was part of the picture. The plan that was perfectly sensible for 2 healthy adults in their 30s is frequently the wrong plan for a family with a newborn, sometimes by a margin of several $1,000s per year. Understanding how deductibles and out-of-pocket maximums work for a new family is worth doing before the baby arrives, not during the billing cycle afterward. A deductible is the amount you pay out of your own pocket before your insurance starts sharing the cost of care, and an out-of-pocket maximum is the ceiling, the most you will be asked to pay in a calendar year before your insurance covers 100% of covered costs. When you are having a baby, there are almost always two separate deductibles in play. One for you as the patient giving birth, and one for the baby as a new patient being admitted to the hospital for the first time. If that admission straddles a calendar year, with the baby born in late December or early January, you may be paying portions of two separate deductible cycles simultaneously, which is not a billing error, but simply how the system works. The review you need to do before your due date has 3 parts. First, check whether your current plan's out-of-pocket maximum is a family maximum or individual maximums that apply separately, and compare the total against the projected cost of delivery in your area and with your provider. Second, check whether your baby's first pediatrician, whoever you have already chosen or are planning to choose, is in-network on your current plan, because the pediatrician relationship begins at the hospital, and an out-of-network pediatrician rounding on your newborn in the first 48 hours is a cost almost no one anticipates, even though switching your OB or midwife mid-pregnancy is something most parents wisely avoid. Third, if your employer offers an open enrollment period in the autumn, the birth of your child triggers a special enrollment period that allows you to change your plan outside of the normal window, but that window is typically 30 days from the date of birth, and it closes whether or not you have slept. The practical move is to call your insurance provider before 34 weeks. Ask for a cost estimate for your specific delivery type and hospital. Ask explicitly whether the neonatal staff and pediatricians at that hospital are in-network, and document the answers. You are not signing anything. You are building a picture before you are holding a newborn and trying to make financial decisions on 3 hours of sleep. And the parents who do this step almost always find at least one thing they did not expect, which means the parents who skip it almost always pay for something they did not have to. The standard personal finance guidance on emergency funds is 3 to 6 months of living expenses held in a liquid, accessible savings account. For a childless couple with stable income and employer-provided health insurance, that guidance is reasonable, but for a family with a baby arriving in the next several months, it is systematically incomplete, and the gap between those two calculations is the source of a significant portion of the financial stress that new parents experience in the first 18 months. Two things change when a baby enters the picture, and they change in ways that require the math to be redone rather than simply adjusted. The first is that monthly expenses go up in an unpredictable way, not a fixed way, which matters more than the increase itself. Diapers, formula if you are not breastfeeding, or if breastfeeding does not go as planned, pediatrician copays, prescription medication for the ear infection that will happen at some point, a visit to urgent care at 11 on a Saturday night. These are not monthly line items you can forecast precisely. According to the USDA's most recent data on the cost of raising a child, families in the United States spend between $12,000 and $14,000 per year on a child under 2, and while that figure varies meaningfully by income bracket and by whether childcare is involved, what it does not vary on is unpredictability. The first year introduces a category of expense that is recurring but not regular, and an emergency fund calculated only on your pre-baby expense structure does not account for that. The second thing that changes is income, and most families underestimate how significantly. The United States does not mandate paid parental leave at the federal level as of this recording, and the Family and Medical Leave Act, which is the federal law that governs parental leave, guarantees 12 weeks of job-protected leave for qualifying employees at qualifying employers, but does not require that leave to be paid. Some states have their own paid leave programs, and some employers offer paid leave voluntarily. But the coverage is uneven, the payment rates vary, and the administrative requirements for accessing even the leave you are entitled to are significant. Families who assume they will receive full pay during leave and find they receive 60 or 70%, or nothing, are frequently the ones who reach for credit in the first 3 months of their baby's life, which is the outcome a recalculated emergency fund is designed to prevent. The recalculation you need to do before your baby arrives is this. Take your actual projected monthly expenses during the leave period, including the new baby costs, and multiply by the number of months of leave you are taking, Then add a buffer of 15 to 20% for the unexpected costs that the research consistently shows new parents underestimate. That is your leave period cash reserve target, and it sits separately from your regular emergency fund, built and held before the baby arrives rather than assembled from your regular income while you are also buying formula at midnight. If that number is larger than what you currently have, the section on the employer benefit at the end of this video will give you one specific, legal way to reduce some of those costs before you get there. A dependent care flexible spending account, which you may see listed in your employer's benefits portal as a DCFSA or a dependent care FSA, is an account that allows you to set aside a portion of your pre-tax income specifically to pay for qualifying child care expenses. The way it reduces your costs is not complicated, but it is frequently misunderstood. You contribute money to the account before income taxes are taken out, and when you spend that money on eligible childcare, such as daycare, an in-home caregiver, or before and after school care, you are paying for it with dollars that were never taxed. For a household in the 22% federal tax bracket, a $5,000 FSA contribution effectively costs about $3,900 because the $800 that did not go to taxes went toward childcare instead. The reason most expecting parents miss this is that the enrollment window for a DCFSA is typically the same annual open enrollment period used for health insurance, which usually runs in the autumn for coverage that begins in January. If your baby is born in March and you did not enroll in a DCFSA the previous November, you have almost certainly missed the window for that calendar year. And while some employers allow the birth of a child to trigger a mid-year DCFSA enrollment, many do not, which is why the time to check is before the baby arrives and not after. One more nuance is worth understanding before you enroll. A dependent care FSA operates on a use it or lose it basis, meaning any funds you contribute that are not spent on qualifying expenses by the end of the plan year are forfeited, so the way to manage this is straightforward. Do not contribute more than you can confidently spend on qualifying childcare in that calendar year. If your baby is arriving in October and you have 2 months of daycare costs to cover before December 31st, enroll for the amount you will actually spend and not the maximum, because the maximum makes sense when you have 12 months of qualifying childcare expenses ahead of you. The qualifying expenses for a DCFSA are broader than most parents realize, including a licensed daycare center, a family home daycare provider, a nanny or au pair, an after-school program, and summer day camp for children under 13, though they do not include a licensed daycare center, a family home daycare provider, a nanny or au pair, an after-school program, and summer day camp for children under 13, though they do not include overnight camps, tutoring, or medical care. If you are using a nanny or an in-home caregiver, you will also need to understand the tax obligations that attach to household employment, which is a separate topic worth a conversation with a tax professional before you hire. But the FSA itself is accessible and valuable regardless of which type of qualifying childcare you use. The 15 minutes you spend enrolling in a DCFSA during your employer's open enrollment period is one of the highest return financial actions you can take before your baby arrives. The estate planning document in the next section takes a little longer, but it matters for a reason most parents do not like to think about, which is exactly why most parents delay it until it is almost too late to be useful. Most people know that a will is something they should have, and most parents of young children also know, on some level, that they have not gotten around to writing one yet, not for logistical reasons, but for psychological ones. Writing a will when you have a baby on the way requires sitting down and genuinely thinking about a scenario that your brain is working very hard not to think about, which is a normal and documented psychological response to a genuinely difficult thing, not a failure of responsibility. But the consequence of that avoidance, in the specific context of having a new baby, is that the most important decision in the entire document, namely who raises your child if something happens to both parents before that child is an adult, gets made by a court instead of by you, and knowing that is usually the thing that moves it from a someday task to a this-week one. That decision is the guardian designation, and it is what makes the will non-negotiable for expecting parents in a way that it is not quite non-negotiable for everyone else. A will is a legal document that specifies how your assets are to be distributed after your death, and the guardian designation is the part of that document that names the person or people you want to care for your minor children if you are not there. In the absence of a will, a probate court will appoint a guardian based on state law, and whatever information is available, which means the person who ends up raising your child may be someone you would have chosen or maybe someone you would not have, and you will have had no legal input in that outcome. The practical move is not complicated, but it has two parts. First, choose your guardian, the person or couple you would want raising your child, and have the conversation with them explicitly before you put it in writing, because a guardian designation that names someone who was never asked and does not want to serve as a document with a named guardian who may decline in court, which returns the decision to a judge. Second, execute the document formally, because a holographic will, which is a handwritten will, is valid in some states and not in others. An online legal service can produce a basic will with a guardian designation for a cost that is meaningfully lower than most people assume, and a qualified estate planning attorney can produce one that accounts for the complexity of your specific situation, with T. With the right choice depending on the complexity of your estate. There is one additional document that financial and legal professionals consistently recommend alongside the will, and that is a named beneficiary review. Life insurance policies, retirement accounts, and certain bank accounts pass directly to the named beneficiary on the account rather than through the will. So if your life insurance policy still names a parent or a sibling from before you were partnered, the will you just wrote does not change that. The beneficiary designation on the account itself controls the outcome, which means a review of every account that carries a beneficiary designation and an update where that designation no longer reflects your wishes is 15 minutes of work that prevents a category of outcome almost no family expects to face. The thing that surprises almost every expecting parent who hears it, including ones who consider themselves financially prepared, is that the process of actually claiming the parental leave benefits you are entitled to through your employer, through your state's paid leave program if you are in a state that has one, and through any short-term disability policy you have, is an administrative process that requires active, documented steps on your part, and most of those steps need to happen before the baby arrives rather than after. Short-term disability insurance, which many employers offer as a benefit and which many employees have paid into without knowing it, is one of the primary mechanisms through which birth parents receive partial pay during leave. A typical short-term disability policy covers 60 to 70% of your salary for a defined period, usually 6 to 8 weeks for a vaginal delivery or 8 to 10 weeks following a cesarean section. But filing that claim requires paperwork, a claim form, medical certification from your provider, and sometimes employer verification. That paperwork has a filing window, and if it is filed late, or not filed at all because you were in the hospital and no one told you there was a deadline, the benefit is frequently reduced or denied, which means a benefit you have already been paying into effectively disappears because the clock ran out while you were recovering. The move here has two steps. First, before you are 32 weeks pregnant, go to your HR department or benefits portal and ask specifically, what is the process for filing a short-term disability claim for maternity or parental leave? What documentation is required? What are the deadlines? And who initiates the claim, whether that is you, your doctor, or your employer? Write down what they tell you. Second, if your state has a paid family leave or state disability insurance program, with California, New Jersey, New York, Washington, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Oregon, Colorado, and several others having active programs as of this recording, look up the application process for that program separately, because it is administered by the state and not by your employer, and the two claims run in parallel. The parents who receive the full benefit they are entitled to are almost never the ones who assumed the process would be automatic. They are the ones who asked the question before the baby arrived. Five moves in the order that makes the most practical sense, with a plain explanation of why each one belongs where it does. The first is the insurance review, because it has the longest lead time and the most potential for unexpected findings. Call your insurance provider before 34 weeks. Ask for a delivery cost estimate for your specific hospital and plan, confirm the network status of your intended pediatrician, and document the answers. If you are approaching an employer open enrollment period, use the information from that call to decide whether switching plans before the baby arrives makes financial sense. The second is the emergency fund recalculation, which does not require a financial advisor, but does require a spreadsheet and an honest look at what your leave will actually pay. Take the number you currently have and run it against your projected leave period expenses, including the baby costs. And if there is a gap, the time to build toward it is now, when both incomes or your full income is still intact. The third is the DCFSA enrollment, and this one has a hard deadline set by your employer's enrollment calendar rather than your due date. Check whether your employer offers a dependent care FSA, and if they do, and if your open enrollment window is open or approaching, enroll for the amount you will realistically spend on qualifying childcare in the portion of the calendar year that follows your baby's arrival. If your employer allows a qualifying life event mid-year enrollment, note the 30-day window from your child's birth and put it in your calendar now. The fourth is the will and guardian designation, and if you do not have one, the barrier is almost never financial, because online legal tools have made the base document accessible and affordable, so the barrier is psychological, and the way through it is to name it for what it is. Not a document about dying, but a document about who you have chosen to love and protect your child if you are not there. If your estate has meaningful complexity, such as significant assets, a business, or property in multiple states, an estate planning attorney is worth the investment, and for most expecting parents the base document is achievable and achievable soon. The fifth is the leave paperwork audit. Before 32 weeks, contact HR. Ask about short-term disability, employer-paid leave, and any state benefit that may apply to you. Find out what you need to file, and when and who initiates each piece, and write it down with the deadlines in your calendar. This step costs you one conversation, and it protects a benefit you have likely been paying into without thinking about it. If you have a financial advisor, the best use of a single session before your baby arrives is walking through all 5 of these together with your specific numbers in front of you. If you do not, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau at consumerfinance.gov and healthychildren.org both offer free, trustworthy guidance on family financial planning that does not require you to have an existing professional relationship to access. If you have found this useful and you want more of this kind of clear, research-backed guidance without the noise, subscribing now means you will see the next one. There is a video on navigating the first year of childcare costs, the real numbers, the options most families do not know exist, and the decisions that have the longest-lasting financial impact, linked in the description below. The parents who feel financially stable in the first year of their baby's life are not, on average, the parents who earned more or spent less. They are the parents who made 5 specific decisions in a specific window of time before the baby arrived, when they still had the energy and the bandwidth to think clearly, and that window is not infinite, nor is it evenly distributed across the pregnancy. Most of it lives in the second trimester and the early third, which is also the period when most expecting parents are still telling themselves they will get to it later. Later, in the context of a newborn, almost always means some version of sitting at a kitchen table at 1 a.m, exhausted, holding a bill you did not expect, wishing you had made a different decision 4 months ago when you had the time. You have the time now, and these 5 moves are the ones that make that table a different kind of quiet. One question worth leaving you with: of these 5 moves, which one have you been putting off the longest, and what is actually standing in the way? Leave it in the comments. The answers are almost always more specific than not having had the time, and talking through what is actually in the way is frequently the thing that moves it from the list to the done column. If this channel is new to you, subscribing is the simplest way to make sure the next one reaches you, and it will be worth reaching you.